Sorry. This meeting is now called to order. It is the February 19, 2019 meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Commissioners Rice and Jenkins will lead us in the invocation and the pledge to the flag.
Pray with me. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. Lord, we ask you to bless this meeting. Let us make wise and considerate choices for our city. Bless us all, keep us safe, bring us back together again soon. Amen.
Join me in the pledge of the flag. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. If there are no corrections to the December 18, 2018 minutes, we'll ask for a motion for approval.
I'll make a motion that we approve minutes.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. We have two consent agenda items tonight, A and B. The items on the consent agenda are plats that meet the requirements of the City of Longview subdivision ordinance. These items will be approved with one vote unless any member of the Planning and Zoning Commission, any member of the public, or the applicant would like an item removed from consent and placed on the regular agenda for discussion. Does anyone so move that it be placed?
Make a motion we accept as read.
We have a motion. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Who made the second? Patrick Noon. Thank you. We have two regular agenda items tonight, and the purpose of this meeting is to hear all pertinent testimony of those in support of and in opposition to the applications before the board. Tonight is the first of two public hearings required to approve a change in zoning. The board also considers plats. The procedure for public hearing items to be followed will be the applicant first, the staff second, and then the general public, and that would include those in support and in opposition to the request. If you're part of a large group with common interest, we ask that you appoint a spokesperson rather than have each individual restate the same information. And when you address the board, please begin by stating your name and address, and try to limit your comments to 5 minutes. When all sides have spoken, the public hearing on the matter will be closed and no further public discussion will be entertained. After each public hearing is closed, the board will vote on the request. The Zoning and Planning Commission's recommendation will go forward to the second public hearing, which will be conducted by the City Council on what date?
What is the date of that?
March
14th.
March 14, thank you, of 2019. All right, the first agenda item, A. Michael, are you doing this for us tonight?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, in the absence of Angela, thank you.
Yes, the first item, application Z1902, a public hearing will be held to consider the application filed by Komatsu Mining Corporation to rezone approximately 16.1 acres of the A2 AR Johnson survey from single family 4 and heavy commercial to heavy industrial zoning located west of South High Street and north of Dixie Street. And this is the area on the map just south of Holland Street right there. And it's this area in the dark line.
Thank you. Is the applicant present? Would you please come to the microphone and give us your name and address, sir?
Carl Keeneman, address is 2400 MacArthur here in Longview.
Thank you. Tell us about your project, sir.
Project is Komatsu. Y'all should remember almost 2 years ago we lost one of our buildings in a tornado on Memorial Day weekend. So we finally got into a place where we started collecting properties, and now we want to put the properties we've bought into compliance with zoning of what we pretty much do on the facility across the board. So there was a few lots that we had to purchase in this area, and we plan to construct a new building starting later this year in that area.
Would you spell your last name for me?
Kuenemann.
Kuenemann.
Nemann.
Thank you. All right. Any questions of the applicant? Hearing none. Thank you.
All right.
Staff?
The applicant is requesting to rezone approximately 16.1 acres as previously stated. This portion of South High Street is maintained by the City of Longview and is a principal arterial roadways, serve major centers of metropolitan areas and provide a high degree of mobility. They are designed to serve relatively high traffic volumes, have high operational speeds, and serve a significant portion of through travel. This type of development is appropriate along this roadway as long as access management is followed. And as you can see here, this was an area that was originally platted as probably residential small lots that were going through the abandonment process for some of these rights of ways. And as you can see from the future land use map, it does designate this area for this type of use. And there's all the lots again. And as you can see here from the aerial portion of that area is already being used for part of their process. And as stated, they're going to be doing some additional growth out there based on their growth in their business. So I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Well, Michael, what's gonna happen to those 7 lots at East Street?
These lots right through here?
No, you got 7 lots outside the box. Up.
Hold on, my mouse is stuck. The ones with the buildings on them?
Yeah, those.
Those are not part of the rezone. They'll just continue under the current zoning, which is commercial. I believe there is a auto repair facility in the corner tract. Those are properties that Komatsu does not own at this time.
But there's no residential in there.
No. No, I don't know that it was ever developed for residential. It was just platted that way. And of course, Holland doesn't go all the way through. It stops right there at the credit union at their driveway. So the majority of it is an undeveloped wooded area that's never had improvements that I can tell of right-of-ways or anything.
Is that area paved?
They have the outdoor area that they're using. I don't know that it's paved. I think it's all just crushed limestone
Crushed lime.
gravel.
It's a slag top on top of mud.
Is that down in the lower left? Is that what you're talking about?
That's where y'all practice? No?
No, that's back
That's
south of there,
south and west of that.
closer to the loop.
Okay. Any other questions of the applicant?
I'd move for approval.
Second.
Eh, Just a moment, thank you. Let's hold that just a moment, please. We now must go to the general public. After staff comments, we go to general public. So is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak in support of this request? Hearing none, is there anyone that would like to speak in opposition of this request? Seeing none, the public hearing is now closed and will open for a motion.
Move for approval.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed, put the same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Agenda item B, I will recuse myself, and Commissioner Jenkins will take charge at this point.
Thank you. Michael, you want to present it?
Sure. Application PD 19-01, public hearing to be held to consider application filed by Johnson & Pace requesting to amend PD 18-03 to revise the site plan for construction of a self-storage mini warehouse located on the west side of McCann Road and south of Spring Hill Road. Approximately 5.645 acres of the AB 258 PP Rain Survey, tracks 20, 21, 21-01, 21-02, and track 21-03, section 8.
Is the applicant available? Your name and address?
Yes, sir. Good evening. My name is Jeff Hamilton. I'm with Johnson & Pace Incorporated. Our address is 1201 Northwest Loop 281 here in Longview.
Tell us about the project, please.
Yes, sir. I appreciate the opportunity. So the purpose of the rezone or the zoning amendment is for two items. One is to request an increase in the storage space that we're allowed to have on the site. We're currently approved under our previous PD to have up to 72,000 square feet of storage space, and we're asking for permission to have up to 100,000 square feet of storage space. And then the other request is in the previous and current zoning, there was an iron fence or decorative fence that ran along the frontage along McCann Road, and we're requesting permission to omit that fence from this project. So I hope, well, I shared with Michael a little earlier, hard copies of what I think may have been included in your board packets. Does everyone have those paper copies? Because what I would like to do with your permission is just to kind of do a compare and contrast between the previous zoning and certainly pick up on a few items that we learned in December when we were in front of you before, and so point to how we've addressed some of those items. So the first sheet in the packet is the site plan that we're requesting permission to develop, and that's what our zoning amendment map would entail should you choose to approve it. Behind that is what is currently approved, which you'll see there were 5 buildings before, and we're proposing to only have 2 buildings this time. And I'll focus on the first sheet in just a minute, but in the third sheet in this packet is actually an overlay of the 2. And it's color-coded so that you can see the difference between the 5-building layout, which is what our current zoning is, and the 2-building layout, which is what we're proposing to develop. And the purpose of this drawing is to just really show the difference between the 2 layouts. To draw attention to it. We've compressed the layout, and I can, if you want me to go into more explanation as to why we have 2 buildings and things of that nature, I'll be happy to do that. But for the sake of time, for these 5 minutes, I'll try to give an overview, and then we back and forth with questions if that's all right. But the 2-building overlay, we've compressed our developed area. We're impacting about an acre or less of what we were previously expecting to do with the 5-building layout. What's important about that is tree preservation area, impervious area, landscape area, things of that nature is what we're trying to make this site a little better than what was previously approved in exchange for the permission to build more space into those 2 buildings and omit that fence that was once, or that's currently required along McCann Road. So just for some numbers, if we talk numbers, in the first layout, current zoning, tree preservation area, we were proposing to preserve at least 23 existing trees, and they were located on the west side of the property, kind of behind the buildings and adjacent to some of that floodplain area. We've increased that to, right now it's on there are also some landscape plans in that packet that we can, in the back of the packet, but we've identified at least 43 trees that we propose to preserve. That's up on the right-hand side of this exhibit, but at the intersection of Spring Hill Cutoff and McCann Road. When we went through the zoning process the first time, that area where we have more trees preserved now, we were expecting to develop a stormwater detention pond there to mitigate increase in stormwater runoff when we develop the site. Through our engineering calculations, we were able to determine that detention wasn't required. And because it wasn't required, the owner has agreed to preserve that area and not take down the trees in that area. And for that reason, we've identified there's dimensions in that area that we won't touch. We won't take down those trees. And those are the trees that, at a minimum, we have the 43 that are identified to be preserved. There are more in there, but if you were to go to the site, you would see 43 that are flagged for contractors to not touch. Additionally, we, I guess if we were to talk about the landscaping along McCann Road, we're keeping the same style of landscaping. We have cypress trees and oak trees and other plants and materials that are very similar to what's across the street at BTH Bank. We were trying to emulate what they had so that we'd have a uniform corridor along McCann Road. And we're proposing to keep that area similar between what was once proposed and what what was approved and what's being proposed now. One thing that we are doing, and this was something that was a big takeaway from the last time we were in front of the commission, and certainly working with staff and neighbors, we propose to extend a buffer. This is the secondary access. This is a driveway the northern driveway on McCann Road, which that's emergency vehicle access only. It's not a public access, so it would be gated. But that access is needed for emergency vehicles. But what we're proposing to do is extend a planting of several, mixture actually of evergreens and deciduous trees in that area. So we will have a continuous buffer from the tree preservation area that we're not touching up along Spring Hill Cutoff and McCann, and extend that along that drive so that vehicles as they're driving by would see a continuous planting of trees. So we're trying to improve that area and make it more appealing, and certainly use that as a screen to buffer the two buildings that we're proposing to build. That's kind of an overview of the site, an overview of what we're proposing to do. We did visit with BTH Bank. We met with city staff, went through the plans and picked up on some of their comments about enhancing the landscape in the area, and as far as the quantity and quality of the trees that we're proposing. So we've incorporated that into this packet. We also sat down with BTH Bank and went through this packet with them to make sure that if they had any questions or concerns that we were able to address those before coming to you this evening. And as a result, we have a letter of recommendation for approval from them, or recommendation or support letter, I should say, that I've also provided a copy of. So just trying to demonstrate that we've taken your comments and we've incorporated them into the plans. I believe what we have now is more in line with what I believe the board, the commissioners want to see, and certainly the public would benefit from. So that's what we're proposing at this moment. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Any questions of commissioners? The
As
applicant?
far as groundwater going off, is that going to be broke off towards, it goes towards, I guess, Grace Creek?
Yes, sir. So the natural drainage pattern right now, there's a small ditch running along McCann Road. It picks up a little bit of the water, but as you get close to where that second driveway is onto McCann Road, the ditch dies out and the water comes onto this property. And all of the property from that ditch west drains towards Grace Creek. And the majority of the land to the west of us it's floodplain land as it already. And so we're not proposing to change drainage patterns. Where the water left the site before we developed is where we propose for the water to be now.
It'll dissipate off at the same rate, basically?
Yes, sir. That's what we're trying to prove out. I know there's a lot of drawings to look at. I
So
apologize.
you're saying your trees are going to be, with all that additional green area that kept you from having to put the detention? I'm still concerned. You said the ditch already goes there, but you're fixing to add some flat concrete. So it's, with your topography, or the trees are going to help hold back that water?
Well,
You said you're not going to use the detention pond anymore, so I'm wondering where did it go to and what's taking its place?
certainly. When we started the process, we preserved that area for stormwater detention if it was needed. During our design calculations, we calculate rates of runoff. We calculate times for that peak runoff to discharge the site, and we look at downstream drainage ways. And what we were able to prove out in this instance is that if we were to build a detention pond and it would hold that water back and release it at a certain rate, we would actually, it would cause the peak when the most water was running off of our site, it would shift the timing and when a large slug of water is coming down Grace Creek. So just in our calculations and our drainage calculations, adequate drainage way certifications that we have to submit, we're able to demonstrate that detention in this case might actually cause more of a problem than provide a solution. So through the engineering and site plan process, we've proven we don't have to have detention. And because of that, we're proposing to preserve that area, not take those trees out, and we're putting that in this zoning exhibit so that they'll stay.
Can I ask a point of clarification on that too? And is that because of the site layout change, or was that because y'all got further into the site planning and drainage study?
Fair question. The detention going away is not because of the site change. The site change is, it helps because we're not paving as large of an area now. It's actually an improvement over what we had originally planned. But we were able to prove with our calculations that detention just wasn't necessary for this site. When we submitted for the zoning back in 2017, we weren't sure if detention was going to be required or not. So we marked it on the site plan as this is where detention would go.
I'm trying to get a feel for the front elevation or the road elevation of the lot. It looks like you're leaving more of the trees because the fence is not there. You're planting a couple extra trees, but you're doing away with about half the shrubs from the original plan.
Good question.
What's the thinking there?
Yes, sir. Two parts to that. One is the elevation of the buildings relative to the road. Did I hear that correctly? Mm-hmm. Okay, so the buildings, the finished floor elevations of the buildings will sit about 5 feet lower than McCann Road. There's a pretty good elevation difference between the street elevation and the pavement that wraps around those buildings. So the buildings set lower than the road by about 5 feet. And then the question about the number of shrubs, there's a significant reduction in the number of shrubs. That's for two reasons. And the original landscape plan compared to the proposed landscape plan will tell the story. But when we were anticipating developing the entire piece of property, having 5 buildings plus the detention pond, we were proposing to have the fence extend along the entire frontage of McCann Road. Because it was also going to serve as a security and buffer around that detention pond. So we had shrubs planted along the entire length of McCann Road. And now that we've condensed the site, we're impacting about an acre less of the site. It's just we've reduced the number of shrubs because we're not developing along the entire frontage of McCann Road.
All right. Any other questions of the applicant?
Show me where the wood fences are now versus where they were.
So the requirement to install wood fences, that would be your buffers between this property and residentially zoned property.
Correct.
So looking on the site, on the plan that we have on the screen, there's a shaded area on the left-hand side of the page. We're proposing to install a fence. Basically, it runs along the gravel drive that's there. It's what CenterPoint and Enable use to get to their compressor station.
Okay, that's on the apartment side.
That's the apartment side, yes, sir.
Okay.
So the other fence that would be required to be installed if we were to develop against it's against the floodplain to the west. And this is, so about half of the property, and I'm going to reference the drawing on the screen.
Go to the aerial, would that be better?
Aerial would be handy, yes, sir. Okay, so north up the page, and you can see the compressor station, which is just west of our site, and then you'll see a bunch of trees between that compressor station and Spring Hill Cutoff. So those trees are zoned they're in multi-family zoning. So we would be required to have wooden fence along those trees and a 10-foot buffer yard right there. We're essentially buffering against the floodplain, but because that floodplain area is zoned multifamily, it triggers the requirement to
So
put up a
that
buffer.
fence would come from Spring Hill Cutoff back to the corner of Enbridge?
Yes, sir, that's where the fence would be located.
And then the other one will be on the south, approaching Amberwood.
Yes, sir. Of course, the intent of those fences is to buffer development, non-residential development to residential zoning.
Anyone else?
What is this, just because I'm stupid? PDGR to allow for a bank development stipulations. Is that what we're discussing with the? Is to, okay.
Yeah, that's where the, that's BTH Bank.
I'm just reading it and making sure, because
Yeah.
you still got me in a.
Yeah, that falls under the PD 15-01, which is for across the street. This is the PD 1803.
I'm just making sure it wasn't part of this. I didn't think there was any room. Will there be any future development of any of this in the northeast corner where you're now, I mean, you said you got the corner at where it says PD 1803. All that's going to be your, keep the trees, but since you condensed this, is there possibility for you later to build an additional building? Are you leaving that open for future development?
We're not leaving it open for future development. What we're proposing to develop is what this project, basically what the market will bear. Right now, it's our understanding the market will bear about 100,000 square feet of storage. So those two buildings would provide that storage area. We're not proposing to build any other buildings. We're not leaving space there to develop additional buildings. It's just, that's the rest of the space that's out there. Certainly, what we're requesting permission or to be rezoned or amend this zoning is what that map shows. So we can't do anything else with it, should you choose to approve this, without coming in front of a board again.
Jim, what's permitted out there right now?
So what's permitted out there right now is, if you took that second building, the northern building, if you took that off of that map, that is essentially what is permitted for construction right now. We're permitted for the first building with the office, all the parking and the paving that wraps around that southern building. We have site plans approved and permitted, the building's permitted, and it's under construction right now.
Okay, now I'm going to ask a question. Don't be offended.
Certainly.
Plan 1 or Plan 2? Because if you look at the overlay, on the original plan, you've got a bunch of building out in no man's land.
Plan 1, on the overlay?
Yes.
So the red, what's out,
The red was 1,
the red is what is currently approved in the current zoning.
and that's what I'm asking you. Is that what you're building?
No, sir. No, sir. We're building, I'm sorry, I may have misunderstood the question, because part of this project's currently under construction right now.
Correct. And I was out there today, and that's what I was trying to
All right.
to
So-
understand. If that thing is gonna, and I understand the components behind the footage, but if I look at that on that aerial, you're underway on a building that may or may not can go where you've got it drawn.
So, and I want to make sure I understand that question. I want to answer the first questions first to make sure that I've addressed it. We're requesting permission to amend the zoning to Plan 2.
Correct.
So that we're reducing the 5 buildings to 2 buildings. We are increasing the total square footage because both of those buildings are essentially 2-story buildings, although one is more of a walkout basement style.
Right.
So we have 2 buildings, total of 100,000 square foot is what we're requesting permission to have zoned. And what I misunderstood just a minute ago is we are currently under construction for building 1. We were permitted with the current zoning, under the current zoning, to construct that first building. And we have site plan permits, building permits, all of that in compliance with the current zoning.
Okay, Michael, that's my point. He's permitted, he's underway. What he's asking for doesn't sit where what's been approved.
So let me try to explain it in a little better detail. So
You see the third map he gave us?
Yes, and that's what's up here right now is the one that has the overlay. And the building that's under construction is the same exact building that was permitted under Phase 1. It's just shifted back a little bit. So from our perspective, if they want to shift it back just a little bit, it still meets the overall intent of what y'all approved in Phase 1. It's just tweaked a little bit. It doesn't change.
Well, I thought he said the building's increased to get to the 100,000.
Okay, so the first building is about 48,000 square feet plus the office. We're under the current zoning, we could construct up to 72,000 square feet of storage space.
Correct.
But each one of those buildings are 48,000 square feet. We would like to build the twin to that first building just to the north of it. We can't do that because that would exceed the 72,000 square feet of space that's allowed under the current zoning. So that's why we're showing a site plan that is what we would propose for the site to look like if we were allowed to build that second building. But we don't have anything submitted or permitted for that second building. It's just the exhibit
I
for
guess the
this
point
zoning
goes
request.
back to building A, based on this footprint, is a larger building than building A was in the first footprint.
Yes, and
Width
so.
and length.
And when they approached us about doing that, because they were approved for so many square feet of storage, we evaluated it to see if it changed the intent. Because really, what they've started building, if what's proposed tonight's not approved, they can't build those other 5 buildings because they've already taken up square footage from those into this building. So worst case scenario is this building that's under construction still meets the overall intent of what y'all approved the first go-round. Yes, that first building is a little larger, but overall the intent of that PD is still the same. And so that's why we gave them that consideration to go ahead and start, because worst case scenario is they don't do their phase 2, 3, and 4 unless you guys approve it. So, and that's where we look at what the purpose of a PD is. And yes, it is very site plan specific, but in situations like this, we also have to consider, is there enough flexibility, in this case, to let them go ahead and start building to where it's not going to impact the integrity of that PD? And in this case, we didn't feel like it would.
So second building is phase 2, but you mentioned 2 more, 2, 3, and 4, but in theory, this is 2, period.
Yeah, so what they're proposing now would be to get rid of,
If we approve tonight, you will only have 2 phases. Phases 1.
You would have
phase
2
1 that
phases.
We've already approved. Phase 2 would allow you, but there's no 3 and 4.
correct. They're taking what, their phase 2 originally was what I would call traditional self-storage.
Correct.
Outside entrance, roll-up doors, unair conditioned. And they're taking that and basically doing a mirror of that first concept of a split level, completely interior conditioned space,
Right. So
which
that-
is market driven.
So speaking to the buildings, asking about that, so one of the things that we had before was single-story buildings with lean-tos on the side of them for the non-climate controlled. And in this case, what we have now is there is no non-climate control. It's all climate-controlled storage. And the footprint of one of those buildings, it's a 2-story building, but it's you know, if you look at it from the south, and it looks like a single story. And then if you look at it from the north, it has the feel of a 2-story, but it's kind of a walkout basement style construction where, you know, 20 some odd thousand square feet of that storage is underground.
24,000 feet of footprint
Yes, sir.
on 2 levels on 2 buildings.
Yes, sir.
And that gets you to give or take 100 or 96,000 plus the office.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So I believe I'm truthful when I'm presenting. We've truly compressed the footprint of that what's currently zoned. So we're compressing that footprint to make a smaller footprint, clean the buildings up and their appearance, and provide 100% climate-controlled storage to
And
match
before,
market.
you had to cover, you were trying to hide each of the metal doors. Now you don't have that situation at all because it's all climate.
That's correct. Right now, so for each floor, we have one main entrance in. It's at the middle of the building, and then 2 emergency exits on the one on each corner, just to really clean up the look of that building.
Well, Jeff, I appreciate your answers. My biggest fear was that A, you were underway, and B, the building wasn't sitting where it was supposed to be. And that seems to be an issue that we catch a lot.
Yes,
Why
sir.
is this not where it's supposed to be?
Yes, sir. Yeah,
So, but thank you very much.
thank you.
Any other questions of commissioners?
Questions or comments?
Pardon?
So so it's my turn about,
Sure, go ahead.
you know, I guess I led the charge on the fence last time. I appreciate what you've done in meeting with your neighbors. When we approve this, Michael, if we were to make approvals, I know that is it stated with all the shrubbery, it's stated with all the additions of the professional landscape and all the notes that I've read that they would do, correct?
Yeah,
I mean, I know what you're proposing. Fence is a big deal to me because we asked for it in the beginning, and there's fences on each side. The apartments have fences. I appreciate what you've done with BTH. That's go talk to your neighbors. But to ensure that that stays that way with some kind of meat in the approval tonight, is it verbiage that way that we're going to make sure our landscaping is maintained and kept that way, so 6 months from now, the current owner decides to sell it, and the next guy comes along and he never mows the yard ever again?
yeah, and so
I mean, I
as-
don't mean that bad. I think they're going to do a great
Sure.
job. But if the next guy comes, what meat do I have to protect the whole extent of this landscaping that we wanted to make it beautiful for our city?
Yeah, so on landscaping, what's required, whether it be through a PD or our minimum standards on a straight rezone, it's required in perpetuity. You know, we have maintenance standards. So if it's sold to someone else, you know, we would have this always on file. Of course, it's complaint driven as far as, you know, if any of that were to die or they don't mow, we have minimum standards for hide the grass and all of that.
Okay, one more. If we decide to build a fence later on,
What we have,
and we approved as stated tonight, and I could just want to put the chain link fence, he could be allowed to do that.
let me back up.
I'm
'cause-
asking because I just want to protect this
Sure,
everybody.
and let me go back and do my staff comment, because I didn't really do that. I kind of passed the torch a little too quick, I think. And I apologize, because it's a long staff report, but there's a lot of information here, so I'm going to kind of read it. Forgive me. I know y'all have it in your packet, but so as we've talked about, you know, amending the PD 1803 to allow for self-storage mini warehouse. As stated, the original site plan showed 5 self-storage mini warehouse buildings with an office building totaling 72,000 square feet, including approximately 52,000 square feet of air-conditioned space and 20,000 unconditioned space. The new site plan proposes 2 self-storage warehouses with an office totaling up to approximately 100,000 square feet. Each building will be approximately 50,000 square feet, split level. Both buildings will include conditioned storage spaces. The applicant is requesting, as stated, to remove the decorative iron fence with masonry columns that was originally proposed for security. And this is based on the security needs for the property changing, going from the external entrance to each unit to more controlled internal access storage. And I think this answers your question. If a fence were to ever be installed along McCann Road, that fence would be required to be decorative wrought iron with masonry as proposed, but it would be an optional fence, not a required fence. So that wouldn't have to be an additional condition. It would be part of what's being proposed.
Michael, they wouldn't have to come back and get approval for the fence that way, but it would have to be a masonry.
Correct.
fence.
So if If P and Z and council approved what they're proposing tonight, they would not have to build the fence, but if they did build a fence in the future on the McCann side, it would have to meet that standard.
Thank you.
And where that fence came from, and I may have stated this last time, so when we were going through the initial PD development process with them, that was one of the questions that staff asked, hey, are you going to put a fence? Because we were, this is a very sensitive area. We were not real sure about self-storage. We told them, hey, if you're going to do it and we can support it, it's going to have to match. It's going to have to look good. It's going to have to really fit in with your landscaping and everything. And we said, if you're going to do a fence, it's got to match the fence there. And of course, now we know, once we get a fence, we hate to give it up, obviously. But that's where the fencing came from. They weren't, it was one of those things that we proposed and said, if you're going to do it, it's got to be this. But it would be stipulated if we move forward. So all the conditions on the previous plan development will remain in effect, including no outside storage of vehicles, trailers, RVs, or anything similar will be allowed. The buildings will have the minimum front setback of 30 feet from the property line, 10 feet from the rear and side property lines. The buildings will be metal buildings with metal roofs. However, the buildings will be partially clad with masonry veneer with a synthetic plaster veneer panel. A portion of the exterior will have smooth face panels in the porch, and these porches will be entryways into the buildings. They will have one monument side not to exceed 50 square feet that will be constructed to match the look and feel of the building. A 15-foot landscape area has been proposed along McCann Road. The applicant has stated that the landscaping along McCann will have the same look as the bank directly across from it. There will be boxwoods, hollies, and hawthorn shrubs planted in a manner where they will grow into a solid hedge. There will be additional shrubs planted in areas along McCann where there is a building separation. Also, there will be several new trees planted along McCann Road as well as in the green space area north of the building closest to Spring Hill Road. The original landscape plan indicates 16 proposed trees, 342 shrubs, and 54 tree credits from existing trees, and the proposed landscape plan indicates 18 proposed trees, 172 shrubs, and 76 tree credits from existing trees. To the rear of the property, the applicant has proposed to preserve as many trees as possible and provide an 8-foot solid wood fence along the rear and side property lines with a minimum 10-foot buffer area. All landscaping will meet requirements in the zoning ordinance, and through the development process, the developer will meet all the other city codes such as drainage and things like that. The development will have 2 driveways, and has stated that the one driveway will be for fire department access only. It will have some sort of gate there to prohibit that will be only accessible with a Knox padlock or Knox type key. And then they're proposing to use the existing driveway location that is shared with access to the gas facility.
All right. Thank you, sir. Any other commissioner comments or questions? That's it. Thank you. Appreciate you.
Thank you, and just it's a good staff report. You covered everything. There was a lot to it. So, and the exhibits that we've provided this evening are the exhibits that we submitted with the application. So they have the tree preservation plans, they have the landscaping plans, and on those plans it shows the location and types of shrubs and trees and quantities. So we're trying to pack everything into this requested zoning amendment so that we're bound by what we're saying we're going to do, and it gives Michael and staff the tools they need to hold us to that and in perpetuity.
Thank you.
I thank you for your time. I hope we've addressed everything to your satisfaction. We've certainly tried to. So thank you.
There's no other staff comment. I think you've got everything you need, right?
Yeah.
We'll go to public.
Questions.
Any public comment? Any further? Anybody from the public like to speak in further approval of this project? Seeing none. Anybody in opposition to this project? Seeing none. Any other commissioner questions? If not, I'll entertain
I'm making
Approval.
a motion that we approve
Motion.
as the plans state here with the revisions.
do I have a second?
Second.
Any other question? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those in opposition, same sign. Motion carried. You get Ms. Parsons.
Thank you, Commissioner Jenkins. We have concluded the agenda item of the business, and our next item is staff update.
Yes, we did not have a meeting last month, but all the cases from the previous that were sent to council were approved. And you're happy to answer any other questions.
Any questions of staff? Okay. Any citizen comments? Anyone here would like to come to the microphone and speak? This is your opportunity. Hearing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Appreciate- Yeah.
We appreciate you not